All right. Good afternoon, and welcome to the first edition, or the first of many to come in the Dean's Leadership Series. And I really want to thank you for finding time during your lunch time to participate in this event. I'll give you a brief background of how this came about and what it is meant to achieve. Again, as I go around and I meet people, I find out that the health professions particularly is not where we should be when it comes to having our fair share of leaderships in every situation we find ourselves. I think the easiest way to describe it is even as far as the Senate or the House. I am not sure how many health professionals are either senators or in the House. The implication of that is when we have policies that we want to pass through, go forward, other people have to decide for us. Usually we typically would use lobbyists who know what we tell them of our professions, not because they are members of our professions. So when it comes to standing up and fighting for those policies when they go to the House, they can only defend us as much as they know. It would be different if there was one of us in there. We would talk from experience, and we would share, and it would be a different outcome. And this is not just a political drive. When you look at academic institutions, when you look at health institutions, when you look at hospitals, when you look at different settings in which we work, we can count the number of health professionals that have risen to the top of such organizations. The question is it because we don't have leadership skills in us? Or is it because our academic curriculum has no place for bringing out our leadership skills? I am a good example. I have done things in my life because it just happened to be. My dad was a teacher, and so I never wanted to be a teacher. Nobody told me if you had a Ph.D., you were likely to end up teaching. If I knew that, I probably would not have done a Ph.D. Because my dad made fun of me and said, guess who is now a teacher? Then, I didn't even know that I could aspire to be where I am today. Someone else saw it in me and said, we think you can do it. You have always done it. Let's give you the bigger capacity to do that. And then I became the Associate Dean for Research at the Medical College of Georgia. And then results started to come. And then I thought, okay, perhaps I could even aspire to be a leader in the health professions and in academia. And that's where I am today. So again, this is probably the same for most of us in leadership, in health professions. It is not because we aspired or we worked hard at it from the beginning. It was because probably the position opened up, or someone saw the leadership traits in you and asked you to come up. But then, one thing I have noticed is, at least as much as I have read, health professionals who have become leaders have done phenomenal jobs. I'm sure Dr. Saladin will tell you how even in her present position, she did not really want to take that position. But then her accomplishments started showing, and the institution had to ask her, please do it. And that's again the same story with everybody. So this whole purpose is again probably at least one of the missions, one of the visions of the School of Health Professions is the University of Kansas School of Health Professions will lead the nation in developing future leaders of the health professions in medical institutions and in academia. Okay? And one of the ways I think we could get there is have an interactive session with those who have been there, done that, those who have crossed that bridge, and how did they get there? And that's the purpose of this visit. So the mission is to help faculty, staff, and students of the University of Kansas School of Health Professions further develop their natural leadership abilities through listening to the experiences of and discussions with distinguished leaders in academia and in the health professions. So it's always going to be a lunchtime series like this. It would be a 15-minute introduction, presentation by the speaker on their pathway to their current leadership role, and then it will become a panel, an interactive discussion where the speaker will answer the questions you have with respect to how do I aspire to become a leader? What do I see in me that tells me I can be a good leader? Are there academic programs? Are there developmental programs that I can go through to becoming a leader? So, without much ado, I will introduce our first speaker in the series, someone who, from the first moment I met her, I just was wowed by her desire to get things done, her leadership skills, and her very good choice of restaurant. So, Dr. Lisa Saladin is currently the Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs and Provost at the Medical University of South Carolina. In this capacity, she serves as the Chief Academic Officer of the university with administrative oversight and leadership over all 6 colleges, including medicine, dental medicine, pharmacy, nursing, health professions, and graduate studies. The Hollins Cancer Center, the Office of Research, Education and Student Life, Gender Equity, and the MUSC Library. She manages a total of approximately $40 million and supervises 18 direct reports. Prior to serving in this role, Dr. Saladin was the Dean of the College of Health Professions at Medical University of South Carolina, where she has been a faculty member for the last 27 years. As Dean, she led a faculty of nearly 140 individuals, directed a budget of approximately $34 million, and provided oversight of 9 academic programs. She earned a Bachelor of Medical Rehabilitation and a Master of Science in Anatomy from the University of Manitoba in Canada, and a Ph.D. from the Nova Southeastern University in Florida. Her clinical expertise is physical therapy for individuals with neurological disorders, and her research interests are racial and gender disparities in access to care, community-based service learning, and motor control treatment outcomes for individuals with neurological disorders. She is best known for her excellence as an educator. She has experience in curriculum development, interprofessional education, distance education, and development of innovative methods to engage and motivate students to learn. She has been widely recognized for her teaching excellence with 3 University Health Sciences Excellence Awards, a South Carolina Governor's Distinguished Professor Award, and a 2009 MUSC Master Teaching Designation. In 2008, she was recognized nationally for her teaching excellence by the American Physical Therapy Association with the Award for Excellence in Academic Teaching. She serves on the board of the MUSC Foundation for Research Development. She was the immediate past vice president and a board member of the American Physical Therapy Association, and as chair of APTA Public Policy and Advocacy Committee. As chair of this committee, she received monthly updates on national healthcare policy issues and was engaged in payment reform, new healthcare delivery models, telehealth, and legislative advocacy. She met regularly with legislators and policy makers in Washington, D.C., and has been invited to make national presentations on healthcare reform and future of healthcare. And I will add to that, a definitely well-accomplished leader who, from our discussions yesterday, she said it probably is where she would stop, but I would like to remember that was what probably she told me 3 years ago when she was dean, and today she's provost. So I take that for her being humble, but I wouldn't be surprised if she goes to higher places. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Lisa Saladin.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to keep this fairly informal. It's always not easy to talk about yourself. So when I was asked to talk about my journey, I thought I'd start just giving you a little context for the environment that I'm currently in. So the Medical University of South Carolina is a standalone academic health sciences center. So we have a hospital system that with Children's Hospital, a couple of main hospitals, 4 new hospitals that we purchased across South Carolina, lots of ambulatory care facilities, and we have a university. And we have 1 president and 1 governing board that governs both. So we are an integrated health sciences system. But we don't have a comprehensive university. We're not part of a comprehensive university. So we have almost no undergraduates. And we are primarily a health professions academic health sciences center. Just to give you a little bit of context for my current position. So pretty much when I was asked about my portfolio and what sort of rolls up to me, it's all things research through, and I have an outstanding VP for research in Dr. Kathleen Brady, the Chief Innovation Officer at the university who reports to the CEO of the hospital and to myself, the deans of all 6 colleges, medicine included, and all the directors of the Hollings Cancer Center. I look after animal lab resources, global health, gender equity. So I have this massive portfolio. And then education and student life and finance and operations. The nice thing about my role is that I'm given a lot of autonomy to manage the academic side of the house. I have a $34 million investment budget, which is all to make key decisions on where to put strategic dollars every year. That's in addition to operating budgets. So we can invest in programmatic initiatives that will move the university forward. And I get very excited about that part of my job because I see myself as an advocate for faculty. I'm an advocate for faculty and for students with administration to move initiatives forward that will improve our institution. So I serve as the Chief Academic Officer. I'm there's 6 members on our President's Council. And that President's Council is the President, the CEO of the hospital system, Chief Legal Counsel, Chief Financial Officer, myself, and the Dean of the College of Medicine. And that's where all the key strategic decisions are made, including related to the hospital system. So I weigh in on the 4 hospitals we're about to purchase and how we're going to integrate the academic environment into those 4 new hospitals. And that's a really fun part of my job. And then, as I said, the strategic investment dollars are... Right now, I get to participate in building a $53 million renovation to our student space. It's going to add a new College of Pharmacy, but it's also going to renovate every central student space on campus. So lots of fun. I actually enjoy my job. If that's one of your questions, I actually do enjoy my job. Now, how did I get here, which was what I was asked to talk about. So I think I've had 2 paths to leadership. I've had an academic path and I've had a professional leadership path. My academic path, I would say, is not necessarily the norm, and most of you might wonder how I got to be where I am, because I would say I'm very atypical, at least in this current role. So I started off as a clinician, worked in an academic health sciences system, hospital system, and I was a clinician. I had no interest in ever being anything academic. Did a guest lecture one day because I had learned a technique that wasn't really well known at the time, and they asked me to do a guest lecture. I loved teaching that guest lecture. I spent a lot of time preparing for that guest lecture, and I loved it. So I was asked to teach more. So I decided I really like this path. I will do my master's, which I did in basic science and did a neuroanatomy master's degree, and followed that later with my Ph.D. So I liked the teaching aspect and the clinical aspect. When I first moved to Charleston 29 years ago, I came there as a visiting professor from Canada, and I was doing clinical work 8 hours a week and then teaching the majority of the rest of the time, and I really enjoyed that. A position became open a few years later for the program director for the PT program, and they asked me to fill that role. I started as the interim, applied for the position, and that's how I got started in administration. And I think part of my sort of love of administration is always wanting to improve things, make things better, always challenge the status quo. Why are we doing things this way? Why can't we do them differently? So that basically grew, and from there I like to think of it as, if you're someone that likes to see your scope expand, I was a PT for quite a while, and even as that program director, I'd been a PT. So I thought with a PT lens. And so everything in my world was neuro-PT lens. I then was asked to be the chair of rehab sciences, which was OT-PT speech. And my lens got bigger. And I started to learn more. I mean, obviously, as a PT, you're very engaged with OT and speech, and so you're in this collaborative environment. So the lens got bigger, but it was still a very comfortable place, and I knew a lot about what was going on with my colleagues. Then I was asked to serve as chair of the health professions newly formed department that put all of the clinical professions together in one place. So nurse anesthetist, cardiovascular perfusion, came under my portfolio, and my lens got bigger, and I went into the hospitals with our cardiovascular perfusion to learn what they did, and I went into the OR with the nurse anesthetist to learn what they did and really get into their environment so I could understand their perspective, because I don't believe as a leader you can represent people until you truly understand their worlds. So my scan and my scope got a lot bigger. I had some challenges along the way, and I will tell you right now, I was not mentored well when I first came into academics. So the things that you might be surprised at is I didn't do my PhD till much later, and I'm not a big researcher. I have developed this capacity to understand the needs to develop research and the infrastructure needed to do it. When I was dean of the College of Health Professions, we took the college from 31 ranking in the nation to 3rd in the nation. And that's looking at what is needed, tying our strengths into the strengths of the university and building a very good infrastructure. So I understand, my husband's a researcher, and so I understand research. I have engaged in research, I have done research, but I am not what you would call a high-powered researcher. So when I was dean of the College of Health Professions, I'd been there for 5 years. I had thoroughly enjoyed that role, and I was still teaching a little bit, growing the research portfolio, and I was asked to serve as interim provost. And as my colleague stated, I basically said, I will only take this under 2 conditions. One, I'm not going to apply for the job because I don't want it. And 2, I'm very strong, I have a very strong bias to balance in life. And my husband and I go on a hiking vacation for 2 to 3 weeks every summer, and I'm in mountains where I don't have cell phone coverage. And so I told the president, I will be away and I will not be accessible on my cell phone. If you can take me under those conditions, then I would like to serve as your interim provost. He did. We got along incredibly well. I realized that I liked being the provost and EVP a lot more than I thought I ever would. And a lot of that is because of what I talked to you about what my role is. My scope went from here to here. So my health policy knowledge through my professional path, which I'll talk about in a minute, and my healthcare reform knowledge and my basic knowledge of research, which again, I have this great VP for research, I got to engage in really impactful decisions for the university, and I started to really enjoy that. So he asked me to apply, and here I am. So that's my academic path. My professional path, I would say, has been equally valuable in culturing who I am as a leader. And I would say I would not be in this role if I had not engaged in professional service and leadership through the American Physical Therapy Association. So I started off, as most people do, just as, on joining committees. I started getting really interested in policy, became a delegate for our assembly, setting policies for our profession, became the chapter president. And it was in that chapter presidency role that I probably had one of the most defining moments of my leadership career, where I was basically threatened with my job for pursuing a professional issue. And the conflict management and the negotiation skills I had to use in that whole big picture issue that was blowing up in our profession really changed me and helped me work with really difficult people, helped to stand up for myself when the chair of our board of trustees said, "You will be fired if you don't come back to campus on Monday morning." I called our legal counsel and our president, and I said, "He can't do that. I am advocating on behalf of my profession. I've taken professional leave." So I had to really stand up and fight against a bureaucracy that was making life challenging for me at that time. And I think I learned a lot of skills through that have informed my leadership. When I was on the board of directors and as vice president of APTA, you get engaged in health policy discussions that are way bigger than just your profession. So meeting with health policy experts and learning the healthcare environment is very significant and really contributed to where I am today as well. I don't know that I would have been that candidate for the EVP position had I not had a really good understanding of the healthcare system and our role within it and the changes that are about to come down the road and how to manage some of that. So that's my path. I've really had an academic path and I've had a professional service path, both of which have given me leadership skills that I think are invaluable in this current role. I wanted to talk just a little bit for those of you with a leadership path in front of you. I will say I never sought a single one of these positions. I was interested in always expanding and exploring new adventures, but I never set out to say, I'm going to be provost one day. I never set out and said, I'm going to be dean one day. I never set out and said anything aside from, I want to do what captures my attention, where I feel I can make a difference. And so when you strive to do an excellent job in what you do, doors will open. And so I looked to see what kind of doors would open. When I put this in front of you, I wanted to talk just 2 minutes about this concept because I think you also have to think about where your skills are and where your interests are and where that might take you. So I have a great associate dean for student affairs. She is fabulous. And we had a conversation, that was when I was, even in my dean role, I had a great associate dean for student affairs. And we talked about what her path was going to be from there, because she wants to do more. And I said, well, what do you think you'd like to do? And she said, well, I wouldn't mind being dean one day. I said, well, let's think about that for a minute. To be dean, what are the skill sets you need? Budgeting, finance, policy, accreditation. Those are all things you should be familiar with. Her role was very restricted to students. She'd worked with students. She loved working with students. She was great at what she did. But she wasn't developing the skill set she needed to move into that role. So she actually went and took an MBA, and she's been doing things that might help her get there. But you have to look and see sort of what your skill sets are, and do they map to those roles that you may be thinking of following into. I would say there are some researchers who are great researchers, and they make outstanding VPs for research and associate deans for research, but not all of them have the breadth of skills to be a dean or maybe a provost. And part of that is because they might not know as much about the legal issues, the accreditation issues, the education policy issues. So, and I'm not saying you can't develop them, but people sort of think because I've been in a research role or a leadership role, then I'm an automatic sort of next succession to something else. So always keep in mind the breadth of skill sets of the role you might be looking to for your future, and try to map yourself that way. I was lucky because I just happened to get a good smattering of all of those skill sets as I was moving through my positions, and people helped me learn them as I was going along. And then, like I said, your professional service, do not underestimate the level of skills you can learn at your national associations and your leadership. Our board had training sessions from key leadership workshop groups across the country to train us to be better leaders, and I benefited from those a lot. So that's my path. I know we're going to spend a lot of time, so I'm actually going to, those are words of advice. 3 things. Strive for excellence in all you do, and I do believe doors will open for you because people notice excellence. Remember, it's never about you. It's about those you serve, and it's what's in the best interest of the institution. Put yourself in the back seat. Put what's interest of your stakeholders in your institution in the front seat. And always reach up to lift others through mentorship. That's a role of everyone moving through the leadership ranks. So with that, I believe the intent was to have a conversation, which is actually what I like to do better than stand up and lecture. So I believe you're going to facilitate, and I will turn it over for a dialogue.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Saladin. So like I said, it is meant to be an interactive session. And this is, the floor is open now for you to ask any questions.
Anything.
Any question that you would like to Dr. Saladin.
And we have these fun boxes to throw around. I'm going to buy some for our institution.
Yes, I was just going to say that. We've learned that with laptops and water bottles, that throwing isn't always the best choice. So thank you for your background and your story, and also for the opportunity to just ask questions. And one thing that, as I've transitioned into a department chair role, I struggle with giving up the things that brought me into this profession and the things that I love, the clinical practice, the teaching, the research, in exchange for some of these new responsibilities and a lot of meetings and a lot of, other things. And I feel like as you go up and up and up, that's got to even be more of an issue, that you leave behind the things that maybe you loved about your previous jobs. And I just wondered how you handle that and how you make that decision. You said that you're still actually involved in some teaching, which is impressive.
Not anymore.
Oh, not anymore. I was going to say.
Well, I guest lecture now.
Okay. But letting go of your role in the PT profession, with those students, and even as the dean, and kind of getting that broader perspective, you kind of by nature have to give up some things that you maybe have been very passionate about for a long time. So I just wondered how you made that choice.
It's hard. Mm-hmm. That's the hardest part of the choice, is that you have to give up things you love as you move along the way. So I always said I would never give up neuroscience, and they would take that course out of my cold, dead hand because I love teaching it so much. But it is now out of my alive hand. Thankfully, I didn't have to die to give it up. But it is a choice. It is a difficult choice, and you have to recognize. I still would say I'm a physical therapist. Mm-hmm. I still have a professional affinity. I still go to my national meetings and keep up with what's going on. Well, I just left being vice president, so it's that expansion that has broadened me, that I think has given me gifts that if I hadn't given those things up, I wouldn't have grown. And I think we all have to look at how to keep growing, because I was getting to a place in PT where I felt I couldn't grow anymore. That I was helping others grow, but I wasn't growing. And so for me, that was my choice, is to grow more and give up some of those things that meant a lot to me.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a great question, Patty. I've always kind of said, find new things to love in your job, and that's how I evolved through those same sort of feelings. More of an administrative question. At your university, as funding dwindles all over the place, whether it be federal or state or whatever, we are being looked upon to do things to try to generate more revenue, and especially in the clinical arenas. In your university, how integrated are your programs and health professions with the services that are being provided in the hospital? Do you send PTs there, speech language pathologists, et cetera? Is there some sort of program or, I suppose, integrated system that allows you to do that and build successfully and compete really within a medical school environment?
It varies, and it varies by program. So our president is all about full integration, but we've got a ways to go. So for example, our CRNAs all practice in the hospital, and they do that through a practice plan, and they all practice in the hospital. Our PAs practice not just in our hospital, they practice across the city in different environments depending on what their expertise is. Our PTs engage in practice, most of them through our health system, but we don't have a clinical practice as part of the college. And that's because there's been a long-standing clause somewhere in our health system that says if we're not filling a need that can't be met by the health system, we can't do it. So we're working to break down that policy and figure out, it's a legacy policy that's been there forever. Where did it come from, and does it need to exist? Because if the health system doesn't want to invest in an area, it's not that they can't, they don't want to. Why shouldn't the other faculty practice plans be able to take over and do some of that, or move into those areas? So I would say we're at a middle of the road. Medicine is highly integrated. That's where all their practice is. Dental medicine has some practice in our hospital and health system. We're working to integrate that. We have a ways to go. I would say we're about the middle.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you again for your talk. It was really great. So something that you said really struck me by surprise, and that was that you said you hardly had any mentorship or no mentorship, and or it wasn't what you none. Felt like you, or none. Okay. So can you speak to that, because I think that's something important. That mentorship is always very helpful. And then there's been a lot of discussion about sponsorship for women and making sure women are having opportunities. But regardless of gender, I just wondered how you managed to move forward and to excel and really not have had any mentorship or guidance in that.
I don't know. I really don't know how I survived. When I started as a PT faculty member, I was asked by a colleague in physiology to write a book. And so, just starting, teaching a lot, oh, sure, that sounds great. There was no thought of how much work that was going to be and how many editions that might need to be, and it was pathophysiology of the motor systems from a clinical perspective. And that was just not a good career decision move. Not doing my Ph.D. till later was not a great career decision move, because I wasn't able to move through the normal channels of a researcher. So I don't know how I survived. I think I survived sort of despite myself. And I guess it's observation and really seeing what others were doing and realizing that I'm a little bit out of place, and then sort of trying it out for myself. And what I ended up doing, I would say no mentorship in the academic world until I was already a department chair.
So then I guess my question would be, taking that and turning it, what steps do you do now then to provide, I mean, do you try to reach out and provide mentorship? I mean, since you didn't have any, and you said there were things that you could have, maybe not done the book chapter or different things, or do you now find yourself giving advice, or what do you do for junior faculty and postdoctoral fellows? Or
because I didn't have it and recognized the lack of what that could have brought me to, I have been a strong proponent of all things mentorship. So we have a formal mentorship program across the institution. Everyone is required to have a mentor and a career development plan. It's documented. You have meetings, and you can have more than one mentor, but you have to have one mentor. So we have a formal mentoring process across the institution, but I personally still mentor. I mentor Ph.D. students. I mentor just regular students. I mentor faculty. I mentor young administrators, and I still receive mentorship. So once I realized the value in what I was missing, I created my own mentorship network. So I had mentors that would talk to me about different choices along the way. And so I value it so much. I spend quite a bit of my time in that role. It's highly valued.
Okay, so I have a question along those lines.
Okay.
If you look, sorry, I just want to thank and acknowledge the presence of Dr. Beran, our Vice Chancellor for Research, who has another engagement, but had met with Dr. Saladin earlier and was here for a better part of the presentation. As you know, our research trajectory has just been phenomenal these last couple of years. And it's a lot of thanks to Dr. Beran for his support and his continued interest in the future of our school. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
I've got to go to the Alzheimer's Disease Internal Advisory Board, but I would agree. I had very little help when I was starting out too, but somehow we did it. So that is the trick. How do we switch that story into something a little bit more pragmatic and practical for this generation?
Yep.
So that's what we're trying to do, Dr. Bill.
Yes. Let's see. So again, I think for all the speakers you will encounter, be it medicine, nursing, I'm not sure anybody really set out to be a leader. Neither did we have any official training to do that. But I do know of programs, I know of academic professions where they actually train, leadership courses are a part of their curriculum. Mm-hmm. And that's the question I was going to ask you. Looking back, I know that looking back, I would have benefited from a leadership course when I was in school, mm-hmm. to learn about leadership styles, to learn about communication styles, to learn about how to formulate vision, mission statements, and things like that. What would you say about health professions in general across the country trying to start talking about leadership to our faculty very early on in their career?
So I think it can be an offering for all faculty, no matter where they are, because you're all leaders in different ways, whether you have the title or not. You're all doing different leadership activities. So my struggle with leadership, and it's the conversation that's happening across the country. Some people that really want to be leaders are probably never going to be leaders because they have some skill sets that are just not going to be a good fit, or some personality characteristics that aren't going to make it a good fit. And there's others that you're never going to give a leadership course to who are going to be really outstanding leaders because they have this innate skill. But saying that, I do believe that there are conversations that should be had with anyone that wants to become a leader that could help them, if they have the interest and capacity, to be a better leader. So I think there's a place for a formal, structured curriculum around leadership. And what that looks like, there's a lot of think tanks across the country that have come up with curricula that are sort of standard curricula, even across all health professions. that at least give you the basic structure of needs for someone wanting to be a leader in the healthcare professions, and I think we could all benefit from that.
Okay. The next. So, being a leader is definitely challenging.
Yes.
And I think last night we talked about what keeps you up at night. In spite of these challenges, most leaders still seem very excited about their jobs. What keeps you excited, and what keeps you still interested in leadership?
Thanks. That's a good question. I think what keeps me excited is that every day I walk into my office, I never know what I'm going to face. It's never the same. And so I can be dealing with a student appeal one day, a faculty appeal the next day, an architect who is wanting to talk about, or a contractor about the building and the plans for the building. And the next day it's, is it out yet? What's today? So we're also partnering with Siemens, and it's a big partnership, not just about equipment, but it's about process improvement and flow improvement. And so I'm talking to people from Siemens in Germany, and I'm going to Germany to meet with their team to talk about how we can integrate the research aspect of what we do into this Siemens contract. So it's corporate, it's architect, it's building, it's students, it's finance, it's everything is different every day. So I like that. I thrive on challenges that keep you fresh. And so for me, that's what keeps me excited, is getting engaged and growing and continuing that scope of growth. I'm always the first one to ask 1,000 questions because I want to learn more as I engage in all of these new activities. So yeah, that's what keeps me excited. Yeah.
So springboarding off of that, wonderful things, never knowing how do you keep track, how do you keep your sanity, how do you keep your motivation with saying, did I get anything done at the end of the day? Because that's the problem with diverse interests, is how do you maintain a sense of forward progression and achievement?
Good question. I have a project manager. She's wonderful, and she keeps... my administrative assistant is phenomenal, and so Robin keeps my life organized, and my project manager keeps my projects organized. So we keep track of where things are, what are the deadlines, what's next steps, and if I don't, my president will, or my board will, so I am held accountable. So it has to move forward, because I don't have a choice, because if I let it slide, I'm not going to be in this role, and I've let people down.
So in your earlier phases of your career, how did you manage this? When you didn't have these supports?
I don't think I was sane.
Well, that's the balance of work and play part.
Yes. So I've always worked hard and played hard. So I will say that I love to travel and I love to play. But I would be sleeping in my office sometimes, and I almost would not go home. And I was known as, the midnight oil, but that would over, and then I'd go away on vacation and I'd be gone. So I think it's bouts of insanity is the way it's balancing insanity at work with a real strong need to play and refresh yourself, and trying to keep that balance. But did I go insane sometimes where I think I lost that balance? Absolutely, 100%. And that was earlier in my career, way more so than it is now. Yes.
Okay.
No, it's for the recording.
Oh, it's for the recording. Okay.
Ready? Pass the cue.
It's going.
Okay, so I'm distracted now from what my question was. Where do you draw the line then? Because you said you were known as the midnight oil. So I guess I find that sometimes I will overextend myself to prove myself in certain areas with work or professional organizations, and then I become known as the yes girl. Like people will just say, well, Lauren can do it. And then I get things dumped on me and voluntold for stuff. So where do you draw the line? Like, are you expected to just, be the midnight oil and work your butt off? Or do you, where's that cut off?
So that was in my yearbook, by the way. my high school yearbook. So I like operating under deadlines and sort of bouts of insanity. So that works for me. But I have to say no. I mean, I think coming in and saying to my president, and even when he offered me the position full time, I said, I'm still taking my vacations and you will not be able to contact me. So there are boundaries that you need to set, and you need to start having the conversation with people who just voluntold you that you need to do something, and just help them see where you're already overstretched and you wouldn't be able to do a good job doing that because of that, and have that conversation. It's not easy, and like I said, it was much more difficult for me when I was your age. It really was, because you are trying to prove yourself more, and you're trying to be that, outstanding person. So I would say that I didn't do as good a job back then, but I'm really helping our faculty right now. I literally say to people that are giving me names, I think we're overextending her. I want to have a conversation with that person, because I really think they're doing great what they do. Right now, they need to take some time out of doing other things. So I'm trying to be an advocate for others to say, please say no. And or I'll even tell them, you're not being named to this, and it's not because you're not fantastic, it's because you're overextended, and I'm trying to help you look after yourself.
So you've mentioned several times team members that are wonderful. And I wonder if you have any particular philosophy, or I don't know if you've chosen those people or they were already there in the job when you took it. But could you talk a little bit about building a team to support you in your leadership?
It is, so I had a couple other slides that didn't get to. I think it is actually one of the most critical things we do is hire the right people. I've been fortunate to build some teams, and I've had to deal with individuals who had to leave their roles. But what I did it in a way that was, I'm going to help you develop first, and if you can't get there, we're going to look at options, but this is the plan first. So I still want to see if you can do this. But hiring the right people will make any leader's job so much easier. And that was not because the old ones, I didn't ask anyone to leave. One of them was my old dean role that had been an interim. One of them was a retirement, two of them retirements, nursing and dentistry. So it does help you to create your team. And if you can't create it and you inherited it, you need to figure out how to help develop them to get them to a place where you need to be, or ask them to leave. And I think that's, if anyone was ever to ask me the greatest challenge, it is terminating people that aren't in positions they need to be in, but it has to be done. The more we avoid dealing with the people that are bringing down the system, and everyone knows them, and it decreases the morale of everyone around, you have to deal with conflict head on in a nice and humane way, and in a way that helps develop those people or help them find another path. But you can't keep them dragging the system down.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for being here. So my question is, as you transitioned through the different leadership roles, were there times that you felt that you didn't have the skill set that you needed, and times that you didn't feel prepared? And how did you handle that?
Often. It depends on what the situation was. So I did take it upon myself. When I was starting to get into more higher level administrative roles, I went to Harvard and did their Leadership and Management Institute, which I found invaluable. I learned a great lesson, and it was all about higher education administration. It was a 2-week intensive with a lot of reading and a lot of work, and a lot of mentorship and networking after that. So that was helpful. From the finance, so when I started to get into, I have a father and a brother who are accountants. I used to say I hated math. I actually love finance. I don't know that I hate math, but I love finance. But I had to learn I needed to learn a lot about budgeting to be able to manage that level of a budget. So I picked up on the things, and I'm pretty good about asking for feedback and saying, what don't I do well right now? What don't I know well? And taking that and trying to find a path to help me get there. And then I ask for the resources needed to help me get there. If I need to take a course, if I need to go spend a couple of days in an intensive with someone to learn a skill, I will ask for that to help me grow in that area that I'm missing. But yes, I feel unqualified and not prepared on a regular basis through this path. And then it's to figure out how to help yourself get to where you need to be.
All right. As we draw close on 1 o'clock, I would like to ask 2 questions. In your leadership career so far, what would you describe as your biggest accomplishment that you're very proud of?
That's hard to name one. Can I take 2?
2.
I am proud of the fact that we went from being known as a teaching college in the health professions to being a research powerhouse in the health professions. And that was recruiting a team and providing the infrastructure needed to help get us there. So I'm very proud of that accomplishment because it has changed our whole reputation on campus. And I think it's also one of the reasons I was appointed as provost is because we were not only seen as the sleepy education college. And by the way, I'm an educator and I love education. So but in a medical setting, you know that research is definitely one of the bidding chips as far as being able to grow. So that would be one. I think the other thing that I would be most proud of is the way we've integrated interprofessional education. Not only, so we started it in health professions, but then brought it pretty much across campus to help students understand the roles of others and to really get to a place where we're nationally known for interprofessional education.
Good. So, in speaking with some of the faculty, and I've had that challenge as well, as an individual, you've always been goal-oriented, and you always want to succeed at what you do. But on the other hand, when you become a leader, it is no longer about you. It is about the people you lead. Yet, you still have a muscle part that you still need to keep developing yourself as well. How do you balance both? Because when I speak to faculty about leadership positions, it is, I don't want to give up what I do that I like at this time and make it secondary and make every other thing about other people primary. And that's a good leadership trait, but then how do you balance both?
So I think you're constantly doing both. So when I say it isn't about you, it's making sure that the reasons you're doing things are not about you, that you're not choosing that step because of the money or the title or the position. It's because you can actually make an impact or make a difference. And so it's not that you don't still need to grow, but you frame your decision-making around what's in the best interest of the institution and the people you serve, not what's in your best interest. So I think those two things can go simultaneously.
Good. And finally, I would say, what advice would you have for faculty, especially with aspiring to be leaders in the health professions and beyond?
Mentorship, ask for it. And I do think that there are many leadership opportunities. And I mean, I took one at Harvard. There's one at professional associations have them. There are ACE. A lot of the national associations have them, leadership skills training. So I would get a mentor and certainly learn as much as you can. Read. I mean, you know, the two sources that I read right now, Harvard Business Review has become my new best friend. I actually love it. And there's great, I mean, that's where I learned about emotional intelligence. And you think, what the heck was emotional intelligence doing in the Harvard Business Review? It's because Harvard Business Review really looks at skill sets of leaders. And so it's this thing, right? Get out of your professional, narrow-minded path. I was there, right? Expand it. Read things that you don't even think you would read because you think it might not apply to you, and it's amazing the kinds of things you're going to learn that'll help you in your paths. So Harvard Business Review, mentorship, find them, grab onto them, ask for help, and then see what opportunities are. Just like this leadership series, I would come to them all. If you're interested in being a leader, ask questions and get engaged. And again, final word, get engaged with your professional associations because there are so many opportunities for you to grow there.
Thank you. So again, on that note, I would like to say a couple of things. I think what Dr. Saladin said is right. There are a lot of leadership opportunities out there. I definitely stand in front of you and make the promise the school will do the best it can to support your leadership aspirations. But you got to be proactive about it. You have to search for it and bring up such ideas and say, hey, this is a development program that I probably would like to attend. My department cannot pay for it all. Will the dean's office be able to help? And we will just look at the budget and see what we can do. But I think the key thing in what Dr. Saladin said is to be a leader. If you want to be successful in the health professions, you got to look outside of your profession. You got to be broad-minded because in the health professions, it's an array of different professionals, and they look up to leaders who can equally represent the different professions. So seek opportunities. Financial education on budget balancing, it's one of the biggest issues that has reigned so many schools and so many institutions. So that usually becomes a major role. Mentorship, there are a lot of programs out there. I know with the Association of Schools of Health Professions, there are different leadership training programs that develop young early career faculty, middle career faculty, and advanced career faculty. There are also mentorship programs, and like she said, if there are leadership series like this, try and attend. It is by asking questions, by listening to how others have done it, that something inside you would let you know, I think I can do it. I think I have what it takes. And then you start to learn. On that note, I would like to say thank you very much for coming, and a big thank you to Dr. Saladin for being our very first speaker. And no doubt, I think she has been very, very engaging. And thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
So,
thank you for coming.
On behalf of the School of Health Professions, we would like to present this to Dr. Saladin.
It looks like blue.
Yes.
Now I might need to wear this on my way to the airport.
Yes.
I didn't bring a scarf. Perfect. Thank you all. And you know, I put this last slide up. I'm a big hiker, backpacker. There's always a trail involved somewhere. Wherever your path leads you, I wish you success. And thank you very much for coming and being such a great audience and for listening today. Appreciate it.